Hello everyone. This layout update video is going to be about three things. First, I'm going to cover what I've been doing on the room as far as removing the wall and installing a new one. Updates to my Ender 3 3D printer, and I'm doing this so that I can make some parts for the layout. One of these is an adapter for post-war switches as well as modern template switches to use Zstuff's Z-1000 switch machine. So please stay tuned for some exciting updates, and like and subscribe if you like what you see. So now that the wall is out, I'm preparing the floor for the floor plate, which here it's made out of pressure treated lumber since it's on concrete, and I use special screws that anchor to concrete. You just drill a hole and install them. They're pretty cool. Also, I started installing some studs. I've been very deliberate with these and very slow so that they are perfect because the shelf layout is going to be supported by them. While doing this, I noticed that there's nice wood for the subfloor and the joist, and others have painted these black. I'm thinking of opening up the ceiling and maybe having this look. I'm not sure yet. In the laundry room, I had a lot of electronic equipment for the sound system upstairs. I'm also going to add another Sonos box for the layout room as well as a subwoofer amp. As you see here, I have 2 amps already. This stuff is pretty much just on a shelf, a cart, and it's going to probably be moved to this area. I think I'm going to build a cabinet to house it all. Over here is where all the electronics are for the house anyway, so it probably makes sense to put it there. I know that's not much of a layout update, but I also been working on other things related to the layout, like new components for track and stuff. In order to make the components well, I wanted to upgrade my Ender printer, so I added several things. These things are as follows. First, my heated bed, which is the platform that you build the 3D part on, was pretty worn out, and in 3D printers, they have these removable beds that are magnetic that you can just bend and the part snaps off, comes off really easily. So first thing I needed to do is remove the old bed and remove the sticker and all the adhesive. This is quite a job. It was on there pretty good, and I had to use some chemicals to get the remaining residue off, which was really nasty, but the magnetic bed is on now and it's great. The next upgrade was to install a new Bowden tube by Capricorn. These new tubes are much more precise. The inner diameter is a little smaller, so you can push TPU, which is a flexible filament, which I want to play with in the future, as well as it does better for the standard PLA filament. I had a little difficulty getting the old tube out. It was really melted in there. I had to remove the nut on the extruder, and you can see here there's tons of residue on this tubing. Next, I cut the tubing nice and square, so it went in the extruder right. They give you enough tubing for 2 printers, so I have plenty left over. Now that the printer is all upgraded, I'm ready to start on my project, which is to create an adapter for template switches, basically 022 switches and the 072 modern switches, that will use a Zstuff Z-1000 switch machine, pictured here. You can see the switch machine on the right and the controller on the left. The controller is kind of cool because all it has is 2 LEDs in it, 2 buttons, and resistors for the LEDs. So what's neat about that is possibly I will think of making some custom remote controllers for my display panel so they look really cool. And those will be 3D printed too. So let me tell you about the design process that I took designing this. First, I got my calipers out and measured up the switch machines of the various devices and started working in my CAD on the design. What you see here on this picture is pretty much the final design, but I'll show you some pictures of the iterations. The first thing I found is the spring that comes with the Zstuff switch machine, which you hook up normally to a drawbar like on a Ross switch or a Gargay switch. Really didn't work well for my application. The spring basically just added more play to the mechanism, and because it's a totally mechanical mechanism, the thing on the right you see, I've just basically had a fork that goes around the switch machine and immediately just connects to the switch, and that worked much better. Here are some of the iterations I went through. You can see there's 2 different drawbars, one with the spring, one with a follower, as well as many different bases. The base on the upper left I tried to save material by having those holes. That wasn't really that great. That was like one of my first designs. And then the one to the right of that, you see the slot for the spring to be able to be clearing. That was a second design. And then the one in the foreground is pretty much the current design with the follower, as well as a clamp to hold the follower down so it doesn't pop up. I had that as an issue. And you notice there are some electrical contacts, which I'll discuss next. So how do you create electrical contacts on plastic? You get some copper foil adhesive tape and you apply it in the various areas you need. What I'm showing here is I got 2 strips that I put in for the outer rails of the switch. So when you mount this, it makes electrical contact just like the old controller. So I have one of them here, and then they have this one here. And then after I do this, I want to have the ability to get track power off the switch. If you want to run 18 volts constant and you don't want to run extra wires to the controllers, you can do that, or you could just not use this feature. And then you notice that the wires, when I add solder here, I mount the solder up good so that it will make good contact. And then I put the wires through holes in the controller. You can see there's holes to go through the bottom if you want to hide them, and there's holes to go up the side to go to the controller itself. And depending on where you mount the controller, you do it either on the left or right. And that's all possible with the different holes that are in the base. Enough of my yammering, let's demonstrate. So here we have a modern 5133 switch, where you can see it's at the diversion right now and the red light's on the Z-1000 controller. You can see I got some sparks going because I got the track powered, and you can see that basically when the train comes in, it switches automatically. You can see the lights change. Here I've mounted the assembly on a post-war 022 switch. It's exactly the same setup. It just goes onto either switch just fine. You can see it's working great. And finally, we have the infamous 072 switch, which the controllers are really sloppy on. This really solves that problem pretty well. And so this is a way to revive your 072 switches with a modern switch machine. And finally, one thing that I want to show is the ability for the switch machine to have a little spring to it. The Zstuff DZ-1000 already has a little springiness in the mechanism. You can see that with this switch. So if you're interested in this adapter, I plan to have it on my website, jimmytrains.com. I also have other parts there that people have bought, namely the ZW Fix for the ZWC with the 2 power bricks that has the really sloppy gear mechanism on the right handle. I have a new bracket that fixed that, and people have been very pleased with the results of that. I also plan to make other gadgets. I'm not really sure what those are yet, but I plan to keep you posted with those here on YouTube. And if there's other things that you want to see, let me know in the comments. Thanks.